No life should be lost on a debt of $28,000, and we don't want that for anybody else.
Hannah Friebel was 27 years old. She was working as a mental health support worker. She was a researcher and adjunct professor at Monash University, and she founded a dance school to help people with mental illness. She'd been on the NDIS for about 3 years. In 2019, she got a plan worth about $35,000 over a 2-year period. In 2021, she was allowed to self-manage a plan, which means she can spend the money herself more freely. Why that prompted concern from her parents and others was the reason Hannah was on the NDIS was because she had bipolar type 1. And people who have bipolar type 1 often have impulsive behaviour, which is a lot of the time categorised with things like overspending. So to allow someone with such a condition to start to manage their own plan when they would have episodes of overspending and impulsive behaviour raised some questions for her parents.
She was mentally unwell during some of her spending experiences with bipolar type 1 and mania experiences and grandiosity and excessive spending, and accrued this debt that then she had to repay.
It wasn't until about 2 years later, though, that this really became a problem. Hannah received a letter from the NDIS saying that they were going to audit her spending. This was 16 months after she had started to self-manage. Once they'd audited her spending, they found that she had almost $28,000 in what are called rejected claims, things that she shouldn't have spent her NDIS funding on. These claims were as little as $4 for something like a coffee, or as much as $5,000 for a dog that Hannah hoped to train into a therapy dog to help her in the community. And getting that letter really prompted a downward spiral for Hannah. She was scared, she was overwhelmed, and she felt like a real burden to her family. She signed over power of attorney to her mum and dad in September, just a few weeks after getting that letter, and together they were all trying to work out what to do. However, Hannah's downward spiral continued, and just a few months after receiving the debt collection notice from the NDIS, she made an attempt on her life in December 2023. She went to hospital for a short time and was released. Hannah made her second attempt on her life in January 2024. Things were getting very desperate. Her parents were talking to the NDIS and saying there was a need for a serious de-escalation of this debt collection.
At an audit, they tend to hold participants accountable for their lack of governance across reviewing and approving transactions, and it puts participants at risk.
2 weeks before Hannah's third and ultimately last attempt on her life, the NDIS contacted her mum to say that they wanted to pause the debt collection, wanted to de-escalate. But at that time, Hannah had already gone down into a pretty dark hole. And so in April 2024, Hannah took her own life. Her parents, John and Jenny Friebel, have been talking about her story and what happened in the hope that it won't happen to someone else again. What they want is to make sure that people like their daughter, Hannah, maybe aren't allowed to self-manage their plans in the first place.
The NDIS needs to be reviewed and improved to help those that are vulnerable. It's a great system, but it needs a lot of improvement.
They acknowledged that the agency was trying to do something and that eventually they might have been able to waiver the debt, but Hannah needed something much more urgent to stop her going into such a dark place. Hannah's story is a really good reminder of the things that the NDIS can do better, and with legislation currently before Parliament, there's a lot of changes being considered. Hannah's parents, John and Jenny, hope that the changes will benefit people on the scheme and make sure that what happened to their daughter doesn't ever happen to anyone else.